I'll just watch how far Adam gets to his boss. So I say ex-employee of Allstate, Adam Heal, or whether he's actually still there. Let me know how that one goes. Look, but what we're looking at here, and this is the key thing, back in the day it would have taken, launches to happen every 6 months, every 12 months. Now we're talking about 5 launches a day. Now we're talking about moving at pace. That is a tech phrase. In other words, move fast and break things. But we can't do that at any cost, which is why I'm excited to introduce our next speaker, Laura Sunday. Laura's the Senior Product Manager at Rapid7, a trained anthropologist, if I'm remembering this correctly. So now we're going to talk about actually how do we actually move forward with AI and generative AI, but responsibly, looking out for governance, looking out for risk, looking out for the ethics, looking out for governance, and all the things that we need to do to progress and to progress safely, both as software engineers and ultimately for the people who are consuming the products that we put out to market as well. Laura, please come on stage. Round of applause, folks.
Hello. So I'm gonna, here we go. So AI at the intersection of uniting security, governance, and ethical business values. So as Kieran said, I'm a senior product manager at Rapid7. Previously, I was actually a cloud security architect at Microsoft. So my whole journey into kind of having an interest in this field and area was in 2020. I just joined Microsoft. I was super excited. I was wanting to learn everything. And there was on Netflix a documentary called Coded Bias. Is anybody familiar with it? Okay, if not, go on Netflix. There is other platforms available, but it's a really good documentary. It charts the story of Dr. Joy Balwani, who was at the time, she's a fellow at the MIT Media Lab, and she realized that big companies, their facial recognition was not recognizing dark-skinned people. So then charts her sort of course of her advocating for the first ever legislation in the US to actually look at algorithmic bias. So this kind of had a really profound, because if you think I'm new in tech career and thinking about these things, it made me realize that when we're developing systems, it's not just the technical, but the ethical considerations that we have to have. So skip 4 years later, I'm at Rapid7, so I lead on cloud and compliance. And we were developing a sort of a compliance pack, so it was a priority pack around how to protect our customers, their securing their AI development in the cloud. We based it on the OWASP Top 10 for LLM initially, but it led me to interacting with our security teams, our governance teams, the engineers, and it was a really collaborative effort to understand what we were trying to build, the implications of it. And it was, for me, it kind of led me, I'm actually studying for the AI governance at the minute, so it's kind of become a real interest. So that's how I kind of got into this area. So don't worry, I'm not going to start going on about Socrates or anything like that when we talk about ethics, but I just wanted to sort of baseline where I'm coming from when it comes to ethics. So ethics, they're the good and bad, right? That's all impacted by society, our culture, how we think as human beings. But the important thing I want you to look at is especially in complex and difficult situations. We are finding ourselves at a stage when there's real societal and personal kind of issues that are arising from us developing with AI in all its very meriting forms. So then you've got business values. So business values are what the company are going to deliver. How are they going to go about it? Whether it's ethical or not is another thing. So we know everybody's got different views on how maybe your ethics of how you go about that is going to be. But I want to give you a few examples of what can happen when maybe the considerations of ethics and your business values have not been kind of put together. So a lot of people may be familiar. In 2016, Microsoft launched Tay. It was on Twitter. It did not go well. It publicly did not go very well. Within a very short space of time, so I think it was based on a 9-year-old child, and the idea is that it would learn from the interactions with humans. What could possibly go wrong on Twitter with that? And it did. It's been a very short space of time. It was inundated. So think about data poisoning, prompt injection. Really short space of time, it all went horribly wrong. Tay started mimicking racist, misogynistic, sexually explicit language. It was not a great public sort of experience, I think, for Microsoft at that point. But what was really valuable from that learning, and I know some of the teams that worked in it, was the conception of diversity of thought behind what was actually going in to that development. Threat modeling, what was done to actually check beforehand. So a lot of work came out of that that was very valuable. So a slightly more up-to-date example of this is My City Chatbot, New York, 2023, I think it was October it was launched. This is where the city wanted to make for small businesses a really accessible way to ask questions about laws and legislation and services that are available from the city office. It was released and very quickly started giving legal advice. So advising that you could take away money from your employees' tips. Anybody been to the US and knows how important tips are, that's not going to be a good thing to go with. But one of the things that actually, more in a serious note, it was judging things like who gets a tenancy or not, based on their income. And it was very kind of, when you think of the moral implications of that, can be quite serious, people's jobs, where they live. So this is kind of some examples of when it is not going well. This is not going well. So AI integration, so trying to make this work day to day. So we have quite a practical approach at Rapid7. So we base it on AI TRISM, which is Trust, Risk, and Security Management. We also kind of lead into NIST ARFF, the World, and also the World Ethical Data Foundation's standard for responsible AI. So there's a technical aspect, and then what I really like is that is the people and process aspect to this as well, which is hugely important when you're trying to develop something that is responsible and ethical. If you haven't looked at the World Ethical Data Foundation's work, I would advise it gives you the questions that you should be asking as an individual, as a small team, as an organization at every stage of your development. Very thoughtful questions. Who's in the room? What is the diversity of the people standing in that room developing that? Some of those questions about, because if you don't have a variety of people in that room, you might not have considered the implications that impact someone else. So I'm going to just, some of the points that we've kind of found that help you with the day-to-day in making this work. So data governance. Good data creates, bad data creates bad outputs, good data creates good inputs. But it's also about, there's a question on one of the biggest security concerns that our teams have are not only the internal use, but customer-facing use of data. So I think you were saying they're used without them knowing their data. That's a bit iffy sometimes, because like our customers really want to know, how are you using our data? If you're using AI, how are you using it? So one of the useful things is making sure your account, customer-facing teams have access to content so they can explain how are you using it, where they're using it. You want to know who, what, why. Clear rules. If you haven't defined the rules that people should be using, it becomes very hard for them to know what they should be doing and what they shouldn't be doing. So have a real clear think. We have an AI COE, so Center of Excellence. If anybody's like security champions or AI champions, have someone thinking about how you want to set this definition of how it should be used in your organization. Empowering your team. So going back to that culture piece that Marie and others have spoke about, that's so important. I had an incident the other week where a customer was asking, can you detect shadow use of ChatGPT? Because they'd found some of their employees were actually using it unofficially, which is fairness, they want to see that. The question I would be asking is, why are they having to do that? From a security perspective, we should be empowering and enabling our colleagues, not hindering them. So why was a decision made that they couldn't use this? So to get ahead of that, be proactive. If your team have got well-trained and they have access to kind of secure environments that they can use, it actually will help you innovate. So empower your teams. Continuous monitoring. So this is of approved and non-approved. So, but then, like anything in security, you should monitor. But what's interesting about monitoring when it comes to development in AI is there's a human aspect and a technical, right? So you're checking for drift. But you're also looking at, are the humans, you need to make it adaptive, because humans, are they still using those principles you came up with along the way? And that can change over time. So you need to be constantly reiterating on that. Transparency matters. throughout the development life cycle. So we need to know, so if a decision has been made, say your app makes a decision on whether someone gets a loan or not, you need to be able to explain who made the decision, why they made the decision. Everything has to be explainable. It builds trust, which is foundational to what we're trying to achieve. So enforcing ethical use. It sounds really harsh, enforcing. But what you need, so going back to those policies and frameworks, so have clearly defined AI ethical policies and definitions. Is everybody, just out of interest, does everybody feel like they know what their company's policies are on the use of AI? Don't be shy. No, that's good. We have one, at least one, two. Okay. Oh no, we've got a few more coming up. Policies code is really useful for this. Get it in at the start, and then you don't have to think about it so hard. Technical infrastructure. Again, do you know what is being used in your environments? From a security perspective, do you have visibility of that? Are you working with your BAU teams? Do you know what they're using? I know this is more a developer conference, so there might not be so many security, but talk to one another. Understand what is going on in your environments. Multidisciplinary expertise. This has been said multiple times. AI is kind of similar to cloud, right? It forces us to work together across teams in ways that we've never had to before. And it's not a nice to have, it's an essential part of being successful. It might come up. There we go. So how do we do it? So prevent unauthorized surveillance. So we're thinking your access controls, your data use policy, looking for anomaly detection. Can you see if a model has maybe been used, you thought it was a HR tool, but then suddenly someone's using it for surveilling your employees or something like that. Prevent discrimination in AI models. So bias detection, Turing Post have a great outline of some open source tools for this. Secure your model validation pipelines, red teaming. Red teaming can be a great exercise to understand what is going wrong. So if you imagine if the TAE team, had done that, maybe they would have sort of thought of these things before or seen it. Protect sensitive data. So your standard sort of data loss prevention, differential privacy, synthetic, you need to go beyond kind of encryption with this. And you can't see because of the chair, but audibility and traceability. So immutable logs, you've got model provenance tracking and explainability tooling. So the likes of Sham and Lime for that. So you can actually see when you're going through your development, the explainability all goes back to building trust, being able to explain what you did, who did what, and why the decisions were being made. Restrict misuse. So usage controls, but then model cards and data sets, documentation. Why was this made? What was the intentions behind it? Make sure that someone 2 years down the line knows what its purpose was. Make it explainable. Runtime monitoring, again, going back to that continuous monitoring ask. Emerging controls. So what's really exciting in this space was actually really interesting. So I've said ethical risk scoring. Ethical risk scoring is based sort of on qualitative things that it's quite challenging. When we say about diversity of thought, how do you quantify that a team has done that? How do you quantify the people that were in the room when it was being developed? That's a very hard thing to do. There's work actually being done locally here in Northern Ireland to work on this. Explainable access controls. So why did someone access something? There's a company, Gnostic, I don't know if anybody, Gadi Evron. He and his team have actually developed a sort of need-to-know access policy for LLMs, which is really exciting. I'm going to have trouble with this all day. Here we go, resources. I realized when I put this together afterwards, I've missed like the MITRE Atlas and things like this, but I'll put them up on LinkedIn later. There's lots of acts, so the EU AI Act, NIST, ISO. The reason I've put Oliver Patel's LinkedIn, so yes, follow Kieran, but Oliver is like the king of AI governance. He's lead at AstraZeneca, but he does amazing infographics and trackers, so you can see which regulations and benchmarks and things are coming out so you can follow them. You've got IE, the GET program for AI ethics and governance standards. So when we're thinking about emotion development that Marie was talking about, that's specific to empathic AI development. So the question and things you need to consider in that case. I've put codedbiasblue.org. If you're just starting out and you're trying to figure out, there's great free courses and things on there. And the AI Code of Practice for Cybersecurity of AI was released quite recently. Simon Whitaker did a great talk, if anybody is, I don't know if he's here today, but he did a great talk recently on that. And just, if I can get this. So I want to leave you with a thought, and that's when security and governance teams, when we are at our best, we should actually be the foundation of how we achieve the aspirations we have for AI development. You know, we want to do it, we want to make it work in the best way possible, and that's keeping people safe, being able to innovate, but that there's equity for people. So yeah, thank you very much for having me. Take care.